We've never had a technological revolution this rapid ever with humans, so we just don't know how we're going to handle that. AI can make you either smarter or stupider. What you will choose matters much more than ever before. What it means to live a good life is something you can't sum up. If it were that simple, the life itself could not be that good. Like, oh, always look left before crossing the road. You live a good life. Well, no, that's not enough.
There are times in life when you want to bunt, and then there are times when you just want to swing for the fences, and that's one where you want to swing for the fences.
You need to stand out somehow. Drop your fear, put it all on the table. Let's see how it goes. Yeah, you might not win, but you're not going to win by being timid.
Welcome to 2%. I'm your host, Michael Easter. Today, we have Tyler Cowen, and I am very excited for this interview. Tyler is the chairman and faculty director at the Mercatus Center. Now, if you are not familiar with Tyler, though, here's the best way to think about him. He is a guy that has a fascinating take no matter what question you throw at him. So I came up with a giant list of questions, the biggest in the history of 2%. Questions about AI, health, safetyism, declines in American restlessness, all these different questions that can help you live better and, more importantly, think ahead for the future and find ways to do more interesting things in life. Tyler ripped through every single question that we asked him in full-on Tyler Cowen efficiency. So we're going to get into them. Sit down, strap in. Here's Tyler Cowen. Tyler Cowen, thanks for coming on.
Happy to be here, Michael.
So you track what is coming more closely than anyone. Describe your overall view of the future. How are you feeling? Optimistic, pessimistic, and why?
I'm optimistic, but there's very high uncertainty right now. AI is going to change most of our institutions, including companies, jobs, even governments. We'll have to rebuild a lot of things, not exactly from scratch, but actually do them again and try to make them better. We're not always good at that. Do we rebuild every city and make it more beautiful? No. So it's a very exciting time to be alive. There's more opportunity than ever before. And I think if you're out there and not too old, your chance of living to 100 is really extremely good.
Where do you think the biggest opportunities are?
Well, it depends if you mean the short run or the long run. In the long run, I think it's living to 100. That's an incredible opportunity, and dying of old age rather than, say, cancer or Parkinson's. But I don't think that will kick in, say, the next 10 years. We're not sure when. What you can do now is simply, using AI, be way, way smarter than you ever were before and more accurate and make better decisions and also be much more productive. And that's sitting in your lap today. Probably a lot of you out there are already doing this.
What are you most pessimistic about?
Our ability to respond to change. Human beings don't like change, even when it's beneficial for them. I'm sure you encounter this when you try to get people to live healthier lifestyles. It's not as easy as you might think it should be, right?
No, it is not.
So politically, I hope we don't freak out, but I think that's possible. But the AI works very well. It's getting better at a rapid pace. We've never had a technological revolution this rapid ever with humans. So we just don't know how we're going to handle that.
This is a good segue into the Complacent Class. Tell us what that is.
The Complacent Class was a book I wrote about 10 years ago, and it suggests that America has slowed down and lost a lot of its ambition, and too many people are happy just to hold on. They move around the country much less, they seize opportunity less, and that our country was in a malaise. I think now we have a somewhat different set of problems. But when I wrote the Complacent Class, there was a lot of data. That was exactly what was happening. We had slow economic growth, slow productivity growth, and low innovation.
You predicted the Complacent Class would end in a sort of violent unclutching. You had this reference, I can't remember who it was from, apologies, but you compared it to an engine sort of overheating, blowing its valve. Do you think that already happened? Was that COVID? Was that Black Lives Matter? Or is it still coming?
I think it's all of those, but those are just the first inning. Maybe now we're at the top of the first inning, not quite the beginning of the second. So that's a long ride ahead of us. I think when AI starts changing more than just a few things, then we're in, say, the third inning. But right now, AI, it can change how you get advice, therapy, definitely programming, computers, a few other areas, but most of life is still the same.
What do you think? So you said more than just a few things. What do you think will be the big sort of thing that happens that indicates it's moving into a new trajectory?
When most institutions, including our politics and politicians, rely on AI more than human judgment for most decisions. Now, we use it as a crutch. A lot of politicians consult with AI secretly and never tell us. But when AI simply is front and center of most of our major decisions, which it should be, but you have to handle that very well. And again, people are going to freak out. I'm just not sure how we're going to take that.
What does handling it well look like to you?
Not panicking politically, not running to politicians who offer you free lunches or bad kinds of populism, or people who demonize others, whether it's ethnic groups or people of different political views or people from other countries. All those are possible outcomes. Plenty of that has happened in the past in world history. A better outcome is simply to realize there's something unprecedented happen. Be a little cautious. That's appropriate. Learn as much as you can. Stay on top of it. And to other people, other groups, be kind.
How are you finding your students using it in a way that you feel like is really enhancing their learning and their thinking?
AI can make you either smarter or stupider. So a lot of my students use AI to teach themselves things, and they become much smarter. I think that's a lot of what we'll end up talking about. And then others just use it to cheat and not put any work. And one can assume over time they will be stupider than if they had pursued some other course of action. So it's another difficult part of this moment. It's a voluntarist moment, I sometimes say. What you will choose matters much more than ever before. It's not all laid out for you in the form of simple instructions. So choose well. Make yourself smarter.
Yeah. With the Complacent Class, if there was a way to sort of track in a person's life whether they're becoming complacent, what do you think the 2 things, 3 things you would want to see would be? What are the indicators in a person's life?
Well, is there openness to experience rising or falling? And that can take many forms depending on what they want to do. For me, a big part of it is travel, but I'm not saying it's travel for everyone. It might be deciding to have another child, for instance, which could mean less travel. And just entrepreneurship, risk-taking, seizing opportunities, being willing to imagine a future that's really quite different from what we've seen so far. Those things, to me, are the end of complacency.
Yeah. So there's a lot of data that shows mental health is either trending downward, meaning it's getting worse, or it's unchanged. And this is in the context of a world that has gotten, I think, better by a lot of metrics over the last 150 years. What's your read on that? Do you think that's legitimate? Do you think that mental health is going down, or is it something else happening that's skewing the data?
I've looked at this data quite a bit. I don't think we quite know yet. I suspect it's gone down for some subgroups, for sure. For instance, young teen women from something like ages 12 to 15. Some of it is just we talk about mental health so much more. So does that just mean, well, we diagnose more because we talk about it more? Or does talking about it more actually make us less mentally healthy? I think it's a bit of both. We would maybe do better not to talk so much and obsess so much over our own mental health, but to go out, exercise, do things, build things. That's the way to become healthier. I actually think that, COVID was a real low point, and it's possible that post-COVID, we're turning the ship around a bit and things will improve again. But that's a hypothesis. That is not settled fact.
Yeah. In the Complacent Class, you had, in the final chapter, you mentioned a handful of things that could happen over the next 10, 15 years that would make us a bit more dynamic. One of the first things on your list was that antidepressants will have fallen out of favor and been replaced by other medical processes that address depression without tranquilizing us. Why'd you list that first? And what was your thinking there?
There's so many tens of millions of Americans who use antidepressants. I don't pretend to be qualified to judge any single case, but in the aggregate, it seems out of control to me. I know people who swear they were helped by it. I believe them. But it just seems there's a lot of overprescription and people who end up more depressed, or it enables them not to come to terms with their problems. And medical science is very backward. I think AI will boost it a lot, but we don't understand depression very well. And since we don't understand it very well, maybe it's no surprise we're not very good at curing it. The things that cure it seem to be quite simple, like friendship, social bonds, exercise. But we could still do better than that, right? But we're not there yet.
Yeah, I talked to Alan Francis, who chaired the DSM-4, and he said we've gotten worse at helping people with really severe mental health issues because we've sort of overlooked them. And in turn, we're over-treating sort of the masses where something else might actually help them. Like you said, taking action, doing something out there in the world. And I think there's also an issue with expanding an inflation of what is counted as a mental health issue paired with all the talking around it that could be kind of at the root of what's going on.
And there does seem to be more loneliness, right? Yeah. People interacting with others less. Is that cause and effect? Probably it's both.
Yeah. You talked about how young men are struggling specifically right now. What's your read on that? Do you think they're still struggling?
Less educated young men are still struggling. But again, I think it's possible there's been a turnaround, that things like porn and marijuana use got bad enough that the younger kids who are, say, ages 10 to 15 are seeing their older siblings and saying, I don't want this. And I think they're going to reject a lot of it. That said, sports gambling seems to be worse. Most of that comes from men, often young men. So it's still a real struggle. And if you go to like a college graduation and you see who the valedictorians are in different majors, it's stunning to me what a high percentage of them are women. Now, good for the women, that's great. But at the same time, the men are somehow just falling down on the job.
Do you think you hinted at this a little bit in Complacent Class, do you think there's a mismatch in modern work conditions and the conditions that some men tend to do well in?
And I would stress the role of schools in this. So young men and homework don't necessarily go well together.
Yeah.
John Lennon was a genius, but he's not well suited even to have done well in the schools of his own day, but certainly not the schools of today. So there's too much discipline, too many rules, too much bureaucracy, not enough free play of some kind, not enough permissiveness of a certain kind of rowdiness. I don't know how we change that given where we are now, but I don't see why it has to just keep on getting worse. So school is too much structured against so many young men. And I agree with your point on the jobs, but we've got to start with the schools, because if you live through 18 years of that, by the time you even get to the job, you're a bit ruined, discouraged, turned off, told you're no good, whatever.
Yeah, that makes sense. You mentioned sports betting. It's on phones. It's gotten faster over time, easier to access. How big of a problem do you think it is?
I don't know. I read the same articles everyone else reads. It's way up. For some percentage of people, it's clearly a big problem. It can lead to bankruptcy or ruined marriages or some other addiction. But that said, people bet on sports so much because betting on sports is fun.
Yeah.
And we need to recognize that. And to simply condemn it is to miss the point. So we would like institutions that can address some of the problem cases while recognizing that indeed betting on sports can be pretty fun. I don't do it myself, but simply condemning it, I don't think is the way we're going to address that problem.
Yeah. And so it goes with any behavior people think is fun. There's for the vast majority of people, it's just a fun diversion. It doesn't impact the rest of their life, but there's going to be a small subset of people who it becomes too much and they struggle with it, and it leads to long-term problems.
Some people have suggested GLP-1s lessen addictive behavior. I'm not sure we have final results on that or that they would help with sports gambling. But again, I would just stress there's so much about the brain we don't understand. To expect a lot of progress in the next 30 or 40 years seems to me quite reasonable.
You mentioned that young women seem to be struggling in some areas. What do you think is driving that?
Consciousness of image, competition across looks, popularity, some of that intermediated by social media, Instagram, where you're always worrying about where you stand in the space of things, but don't have enough face-to-face meetings and get-togethers to clear that up. That's my intuition. There's some evidence for that.
Yeah. You were early to not fully buy into the argument that social media is causing mental health problems among young people. Where do you stand on that now?
Pretty much my view's the same. I think there is modest evidence that it has small negative effects on mental health, though those are larger effects for a certain group of younger teenage girls. Those studies never look at the benefits of social media. Smart young people learn things through it. They get in touch with each other. If you have some kind of disability, it can truly be a lifeline to the rest of the world or your entire education. So I think the benefits probably outweigh the costs, but what I see is a kind of moral panic where people lead a crusade, never talking about the benefits. The best done studies do show some mental health costs, but typically they're pretty small. If you ban phones in a school, which I'm not opposed to be clear, but, grades go up by some fraction of a standard deviation that's pretty unimpressive. It's just not the main answer to our problems. Our problems are so often reality, not just the phones.
Yeah, there's a lot of things going on. Among your students who you find use social media well in a way that enhances their life, what are they doing?
They learn from it. They learn economics from it. They learn how to communicate from it. They just learn how to learn. They meet other people. They may meet romantic partners. So very, very significant benefits. And all the time, because of a program I'm involved with, I speak to young teens around the world who are doing amazing things with AI. And typically, they're learning from other people they met on social media. And those people are the innovators of our future. They're critically important. We now find them everywhere, not just, say, in Silicon Valley. And that's in large part because of social media, that it spreads ideas and knowledge of how to.
You wrote in Complacent Class, there's been a decline in American restlessness. What do you mean by that? I feel like a lot of people hear restless and they think it's a bad thing. For example, in recovery books, they say one of the big problems with alcoholics or drug addicts is that they're irritable, restless, and discontent.
It's a good thing and it's a bad thing. So I was born in 1962, and the era I grew up in, the 1970s, for the most part, was extremely restless. I think it's correct to say it was too restless, too stupid in some ways, too many drug problems of a certain kind, too much itchiness. But if you look at the 70s, also the second half of the 1960s, there's something in the culture. It's most obvious in the music, also in a lot of the movies. It was so dynamic. It wasn't just about tentpole sequels or music for 20 years sounding exactly the same. There was so much innovation and liveliness. And America felt in some ways then more vivid. So it's a cost-benefit thing, but restlessness has a big upside. People who migrate to the United States, who have been phenomenal additions to this country for the most part, they have come because they were restless where they once were.
Yeah, it's a willingness, it's an itch to change your circumstances for the better almost.
That's right. Yeah. It can backfire though, right? And in the aggregate, too much social restlessness, you can have less order, less coherence.
Your point about music, I think, is great. When's the last time you listened to a song that was older than 20 years ago? Is that most of the music you're listening to older?
Of course. That was, I don't know, an hour ago when I was in my car. But if there's a song from 1964 or 1968, you can tell right away which year it was from. You could never say that about the last 20, 25 years of music.
Yeah, there's a sameness. Do you think the sameness is, what do you think is driving a sort of sameness to music and film?
Yeah, people have run out of ideas for now. I think this happens frequently in history, and then the well is refreshed. But we're in a somewhat dry, infertile period. And I think digital music, it enables you to make, in a sense, any sound you want. That led to techno and rap and some great innovations. But after we made all the sounds we wanted to, we're a bit like, what next? Well, you can mix and match genres indefinitely, but that too has become a bit boring. There's like trip-hop jungle with Brazilian and reggae and something else thrown in and some Russian Orthodox church music as well. But that's not the same as actual creativity, and we're waiting for the next big thing. I'm not pessimistic at all, but we're waiting for the next big thing.
Do you think AI could help us get to the next big thing?
I think it's highly likely it will, and that within 5 years it will compose some pretty amazing music. But that said, I've yet to hear any AI-composed music that I knew was AI-composed and I felt was great.
Yeah.
It's still all generic.
You also wrote, Americans obsess over safety more. Where do you think that's hurt us as a society?
Kids are brought up where the parents freak out if the kid is not available around and monitored every moment. that probably is safer for the kid. But the notion of free-range kids who go off and explore and do their own thing, that boosts creativity. I think we should do more in the direction of free-range kids. I'm not saying everyone should be forced to do it that way, but we overprotect. And in terms of mental health, maybe you make your kid less safe. Maybe the chance they're run over by a car is smaller. That's easy to believe. But I'm not sure, on net, all things considered, your kid is actually safer.
Do you see that in adults' lives as well?
Adults, to me, seem to take one of two paths. They're either much safer or much riskier and more self-destructive. The people who are much safer can tend to be complacent and just stuck in certain patterns, but you would still say their lives are good. If you live in the suburbs, have a high income, have a professional job in the United States, 2026, like on average, your life's probably pretty amazing. So we should recognize that. But we do need a bit more from people in terms of dealing with these radical changes that now all of a sudden are upon us. And just staying put is not going to be good enough anymore.
You were pretty early in pointing out overparenting, I'll call it. In your book, you referenced how dodgeball and tag have been banned often. And now that's a sort of bigger movement, the free-range parenting movement. Has that moved the dial at all? Do you think it's getting any better?
More and more people are saying this. More people are allowing their kids to be free range. I'm not sure of the numbers. I don't see school systems as having budged. But today, 20% of all American kids are not in the mainstream school system. They're getting a mix of different approaches, but I think that's healthy. Admittedly, not all of them are good. But there is more freedom now than there was 20 years ago, yes.
Yeah, and you yourself, you travel to a lot of difficult and uncomfortable places. Why do you go to places like that instead of just the resort in Cabo that's walled off?
I've never been to Cabo. I don't like resorts, even if they're comfortable. I've been to about 105 countries. You learn things from challenging places. You see how most people have lived for most of human history, and you realize this is what it means to be a human being. You appreciate more the things you have. You just get perspective. And I think actually it's one good cure for potential mental health problems. It's just to go out and see the world. And I don't mean, vacation on the French Riviera or going to Cabo. I mean seeing the actual world. Like, go to India, whatever.
What are some of the places you've been that have taught you the most?
India would be, in the top half dozen. You see how much diversity is in the country. This is a cliche, but how spiritual it can be, how curious the people are. That in very poor parts of India, a lot of the people can seem actually pretty happy. You also see the very, very serious problems that women have in India and what a tragedy that is. We can too easily forget about that. And you see amidst severe poverty, incredible creativity with the visual arts, cuisine, music, many other areas. Just refreshing. China is an important place to go. To see, Western history, you'd go, of course, to Western Europe, all the usual places. Just traveling around the United States, one of my favorite things to do. Like, every state is interesting, every place. Even your local area, like go to 3 towns over. Have you ever been? If not, give it a try. I call it local tourism. See what small thing you can find that will intrigue you.
What do you do in those towns? Are you just searching for that small thing? Are you talking to people? Like, what advice would you give people for diving into that?
The way I do it, typically I start with a meal, a place I want to eat that I haven't been before and I haven't been to the town, and then see if you can talk to people. If you're into sports, you might try a sports bar. If you drink, you might go to a bar. That's not what I do. But start with who you are, right? Do something you want to do. Otherwise, it's not going to be real enough. But just start with yourself and keep on going.
You mentioned how people who live in poverty, you often find that they can be very happy. What do you think that tells us about happiness?
Some of it is relative to expectations. Some of it is about the strength of your human connections. The poor people who are happy, that's with a big caveat, that they're often struck by terrible tragedies. A child will die that would not have died in the United States, or a relative passes away at age 60 when it didn't necessarily have to happen. So it's not simple, flat-out happiness, but there is an appreciation of the positive things that I think most of us could learn a lot from.
Yeah. in my own travels, I mean, I'll say some of the hardest I've ever laughed with other people. I can think of two specific moments. One was in Iraq. The other was in the middle of the Bolivian jungle with the Chamane tribe. And that sort of instilled that in me as well. Is that people can find a way to be happy despite conditions that I think me coming into it, I might see as, oh, wow, these people are living terribly, but still there's ways to find that. Now, I don't know if it's just me showing up and I'm the diversion and everyone goes, hey, look at that guy. Let's all, let's entertain him and be happy. But it is fascinating.
I've spent a lot of time in indigenous rural Mexico, which maybe in some ways is a bit like Bolivia. And the people there are crack-ups. They are hilarious. So yeah, that's a big takeaway in terms of learning. Where'd you go in Bolivia exactly?
I went upriver, the Beni River, which is a feeder to the Amazon, about 6 hours in a canoe. And, eventually you take this canoe upriver, it's all just a wall of jungle. And then eventually the guy pulls over on this little sand outlet and he goes, okay, we're here to see the tribe. And you go, we've been in this canoe for 6 hours. How do you know they're here? And he just goes, trust me, they're here. And then you hike up and there they were. Yeah, it was a wonderful trip.
How did that change how you view the world?
I think it changed what I just said, that people can live well despite conditions. I saw a lot of movement there. People move around all day. I think they take about 20,000 steps a day. They're outdoors. They're in tight communities. They rely on each other. Their diet also is pretty simple and plain, and it seems to help them not get a lot of the chronic diseases that we get. Now, of course, to your point, there's still a lot of danger there. When I asked the guy, I was like, okay, people don't seem to die of heart disease, Alzheimer's, dementia, all these things. And if they can, a lot of them live into their 80s. So I said, well, what does kill people? And he just looked at me and he goes, snakes. If you get bit by a snake, we're not making it out of here. You're going to die out here because it's just the canoe ride back to town is way too long. And so there was that reality there too of, disaster can strike at any minute. And they're also being taken advantage. There's a lot of environmental pollution happening in the area due to corporations mining in the area, which is messing with their rivers and their food sources. So you see they're vulnerable in a lot of ways that we aren't as much.
Yeah. Where I used to visit in Mexico, it was scorpion bites would kill the kids, not snakes, but similar thing.
Yeah. You mentioned community as well. What's your take on the supposed epidemic of loneliness that the Surgeon General pointed out?
There's some. But I think we have to keep in mind, no one is keeping you from socializing with other people. A lot of it has always been a drag, right? Or a burden. So you want to get the better side of it. And I think we've iterated and gone too far in the other direction. But if you simply think of it all as a mistake, like all of loneliness is a mistake, I think like with sports gambling, you're missing the point. You're retreating from a lot of social interactions that are stressful or bad for your mental health. And that's one reason why people end up lonely. But again, I would readily admit we've gone too far. And we need to rejigger the whole thing and figure out how to match up to each other better.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of people have a harder time. Well, maybe it's always the same, but you were forced into being social. But people have a harder time being alone today with themselves. They don't know what to do with that time. And that sort of sets off this loneliness thing when you can't actually find other people around to connect with as easily.
I love being alone, and then it refreshes me to go out and seek others again.
So let's pivot to health a little bit. You've written that I'm going to quote you here, endured a lifetime of people with very exact ideas about health maximization and a lot of data. What's your take on the current popularity in longevity?
I think longevity research will work and pay off. It's striking to me for things like diet, how little data we've had. I think in less than 30 years, we'll have lots and lots of data and have figured out a great number of very important questions. And we'll but anyone who follows the knowledge will be much healthier.
Yeah, I agree. You also had a point on marginal revolution. You said a 50-year-old American male who doesn't exercise regularly can expect to live to 80. The same person who exercises 8 hours a week is expected to live to 88. So if we assume the exercise costs only the time allocated to it and provides only the expected return on life, we find that the return on investment is 5.8%. Is exercise worth it purely from a lifespan perspective?
Well, 5.8% is more than I get on my T-bills, so I'll say yes.
And you exercise often. What does your exercise look like?
Shooting baskets, swimming, walking, playing tennis and ping pong with my wife. So it's pretty basic. I have weights and I have an exercise bike, and I do those when the weather is bad, which is maybe a quarter to a third of the year, and I combine those things.
When do you think exercise is not worth it?
There may be a lot of people who over-exercise to the point of it being stressful. Again, I'd like for them to be studied. Maybe it pays off. That's one of the things I don't know. So you shouldn't exercise and, say, neglect duties to your loved ones. But at most margins, more of it seems to be good.
Back to basketball and your shooting. You wrote that your free throw percentage, 70% indoors, 50% outdoors. What can that tell us about how environment impacts performance?
I think the wind distracts me. And I know that's silly. You would think after, more than 50 years of shooting baskets, mostly outside, I'd have gotten over that. But I haven't. And you realize what a feeble creature you are. It's one thing I like about shooting baskets. Your percentage is just never that high, even if you're pretty good. And your misses are almost always kind of stupid. Like, why didn't you put more arc on the ball? Don't you know that by now, Tyler? And it keeps you humble. And in the meantime, the exercise does you some good.
Do you follow the NBA?
Of course I do.
What's your thoughts on the three-point revolution? What are its upsides? What are its downsides?
Well, I think analytics has made many sports more boring, more homogenized, and teams have less distinct identities. Right now in the NBA, you just want like these 5 shooters who can all shoot the three and all play defense and are somewhat interchangeable with positions. But when you look at the very best teams, it turns out, in fact, they're not built that way. The New York Knicks, an unusual and I guess surprise NBA champion, but Jalen Brunson is tiny and he has no vertical leap. And he's an unusual player. It's a big surprise. He's like the hero of the season. But again, there's a lot of adjustments. And for the first time in a while, over the last year, the expected value of a 2-point shot became higher than that of a 3-point shot because defenses are so expecting the 3-pointer that there's gain from doing the shorter, mid-range 2-pointer. So things adjust. There's a kind of market in spontaneous order, and sports stay vital. And I'm very optimistic about the NBA. I think the year coming up will just be fantastic. Like LeBron on the 76ers, hilarious.
Yeah.
I'm one of the people who predicted that, by the way.
Were
I'm
you
very
really?
proud of that. Yes.
Why'd you predict that?
I thought what he really cares about is winning and being GOAT. And that's the only team he could join that might win a title. I don't think that much of Cleveland as ever getting past the second round with James Harden in there.
Yeah. So LeBron, his protocols for his performance are pretty strict, pretty complicated. Granted, he's chasing this elite performance at an NBA level, but your own health advice you've called trivial and boring. What does it look like?
Be happy, have a good attitude, exercise, don't become a slug. Trivial and boring, but probably correct.
Yeah, probably correct, but I feel like most people don't follow the trivial and boring. Why do you think that is?
I don't know. People seem to be exercising more and more. Now, some of that's because they get less of it in their daily life. More jobs are service jobs or desk jobs. But a lot of people seem to be taking the lesson to heart. And again, I think it's this bimodal distribution. A lot of Americans are way less healthy than ever before with obesity or drug problems, all kinds of issues, diabetes. But the people who are healthy at all just seem much healthier. And if you're like a Japanese-American woman living in New Jersey, I think your life expectancy is already over 90. Yeah. And that's even without AI-driven advances. That's pretty impressive, 90.
I agree. And I think to your point about exercise, you're seeing in major marathons, you're seeing a lot more people apply. You're also seeing the times of the marathons get faster and faster in order to qualify. So there does seem to be some sort of exercise boom happening.
And the record for running the fastest mile, it had been intact for 16 years? And finally it was broken. It's only one data point, but it makes me hopeful that advanced data analytics will make us all healthier.
What do you think will happen in medicine, big advances using AI?
I think we will beat back literally every single thing which kills us. except maybe for very rare diseases that are hard to trace and have data on. So I think all that will happen over the next 30 to 40 years. And say you will die of old age, don't buy a motorcycle would be my addendum piece of advice. But accidents aside, which are also going down, most people will die of old age.
Yeah. One thing that I think is interesting and promising is I was talking to a doctor who's using AI to record the conversations that she has with her patients, with their permission, of course. The AI then generates a summary of their conversation, where it went. But the important point is that before this technology, doctors weren't really talking to their patients because they're having to half listen as they write down all their notes. And now she can have this intimate face-to-face, what do you need? What are your health goals? How do you feel about medicine? Are you aggressive? Are you conservative? So I think that's one way that's probably already moving the dial, at least from the patient experience.
Yeah, I think the biggest advances will come when we can take scientific research labs and have them in large part run by AIs. Now, that's a ways away. That's why I say 30 to 40 years. I have friends who think we're going to cure every disease in 10 years. That seems to me wildly unrealistic. When you look at people who actually work in labs and tell them that, they laugh. The number of just inconveniences that require human intervention in a lab are very numerous, but will generate new ideas for drugs, medical devices, antibiotics, vaccines at a phenomenal rate. It'll become a new growth sector testing them all. That will take a lot of time. But again, at the end of the day, data is going to win, and we'll figure out what works, and you will die of old age.
Well, I'd like to say I'm looking forward to it. It'll be a longer run, so I'm looking forward to the longer run.
Save accordingly.
Yeah. You said initiative now beats intelligence. What does initiative look like? What's a Tuesday for someone who has initiative?
That you wake up in the morning and learn what is new going on in AI. AI supplies at least some of the intelligence for you, not all of it. You have to know what to do with it. But simply being willing to wake up and say, hey, there's something I need to learn is now worth much more than, I have a law degree from Harvard. So the AIs will outcompete those people who do not use them at all. It will always be the humans working with the AIs. I don't think we'll have anything like mass unemployment, but people who just sit back and do things the way same old, I think they're going to have a lot of problems.
How are you using AI to supply yourself with information every day?
Anytime I take a trip, what hotel I stay in, where I eat, what concerts I go to, I ask AI, landmarks I see, paintings I look at, I learn much more about them, asking AI. If I'm doing work, I have my own podcast, Conversations with Tyler. The AI doesn't give me questions, but I prepare for guests using AI, and I just learn a lot much more quickly than if I had to just keep on buying dozens of books and reading them.
Yeah. Do you think initiative is inborn or can it be trained?
Both. I think, like most things, are at least 60% inborn. Initiative, I don't know of a good study that clearly shows the answer, but my guess that it's at least 60% would be my intuition. But after that, you can definitely train it. I mean, look at athletes. They were born with something, but some are very good at training it, like LeBron, and others are not.
You've read a lot of applications at Emergent Ventures. One of the most common mistakes you noted was timidness. What does that actually look like in an application?
People who don't have a bold vision and they're afraid to express it and they just want to avoid sounding weird. And those may be useful qualities in many parts of life. I get that. Like there's a reason why so many people have them. But when you're trying to win an award, which is based on what will be a one-to-one conversation with a judge, me, who's speaking to a lot of people, you need to stand out somehow. Yeah. So, drop your fear. Put it all on the table. Let's see how it goes. Yeah, you might not win, but you're not going to win by being timid.
Yeah. There are times in life when you want to bunt, and then there are times when you just want to swing for the fences, and that's one where you want to swing for the fences.
And notice in Major League Baseball, they hardly ever bunt anymore because they got all the data, and it showed them bunting was crazy.
Yeah.
It's a nearly automatic out just to advance a runner. It's a mistake.
Yeah. You also said a differentiator was energy and persistence. How do you think people can build that if it doesn't come naturally?
Again, I think a lot of that comes naturally. But in terms of building it, just train yourself. So, if you're a podcaster, well, how many podcasts can you do in a day? before you feel a bit gluggy and your mind doesn't work properly anymore? Well, maybe invest in, trying to do some more than you used to. Or how many books can you read in a row? Or for how long can you sit on a plane and still be doing your work? Those are all areas, just simple training. Now, if you can do sophisticated database training, so much the better. But most people, they just don't try to train at all. They're just in some kind of groove. Maybe they're pretty smart. The groove does pretty well by them. They're in a rich society. They get by. But man, just like train for all the things you do. Just try it. If you hate it, stop. Just try it.
I saw a line by a researcher and psychiatrist. He's up at the University of Toronto. His name is Nick Fabiano. And he had this line. He said, your life will change when you realize you can just do stuff. Do you agree with that?
I think there's more to it than that, but I think it's a good attitude to have. I will always vote for people having that attitude. But if you literally, just like as a little kid, stumbled out onto the street and said, I'm going to do something, I don't think you'd get very far. There's just a lot of pre-investment that's needed. But yes, it's the correct attitude.
Yeah. How do you think AI might be able to enhance people's doing stuff, energy, persistence? Is there a way to use that tool to sort of build yourself in getting those reps?
You can teach yourself anything you want, and the AI never gets tired. It's like the sparring partner who never quits. So it's up to you what to do with it. Depends on your goals. But just try to learn something you've been curious about. Use the AI. At the margin, it's free, right? And keep on going. See how far you can get.
Yeah.
I shortly have a project to teach myself quantum computing. Not how to build one, but just to learn about it and understand it better. And I'll mostly be relying on the AI.
How do you choose which projects you're going to go down the rabbit hole on?
Well, I have a podcast guest who just won a Nobel Prize in quantum computing. So that determines that. But it's pretty random or serendipitous for me. Something I don't know about, or maybe there's a place that I decided to go or I have to go. And then you think like, well, I've never been there before, so let's learn about Senegal, whatever. I don't think for me it should be too directed, but for many people with these very well-defined careers, well, maybe that's just what they ought to be learning about.
There is something fun about the serendipity. You mentioned how you use AI when you're traveling. I recall hearing you say, if you're at a museum, you might take a shot of a painting or something, or a church altar and say, tell me about this. What have you learned from that? How do you actually do that? What does it look like? You
learn so much. The AI, I'll use ChatGPT for this. It has a camera in it. You press the camera button, take the photo, speak to the thing. You get your answer quickly. It's pretty reliable. I think it's at least as reliable as Wikipedia. And then you know what it is you're looking at. You're just walking through, Buenos Aires. You see a building. Oh, that's lovely. You used to just keep on walking. Now you stop, photo, ask. It's great.
Yeah, and you learn something. There was just a big piece in The Atlantic about how we are shifting away from reading culture into an audio and video culture. People are saying attention is kind of shot. What's your read on that? Do you think it's legitimate, or is this a moral panic?
Well, I would say both. I think the real blow to reading culture started in the 1920s when radio came along. And radio was a huge, huge deal. There had been nothing like it before. People went crazy over radio. A lot of radio was stupid. Some of it was smart. So we've been living with this shift away from the printed word for over 100 years. I don't prefer it. I prefer print culture. But we've dealt with it. It's okay. It will continue to be okay. My personal preference would be for more print culture. For me, it's more analytic. It's more thoughtful. You can go back to it in a way I find special. But on the other hand, you've got to move on. It's hardly that books have been abolished. There's more around than ever before. And you can speak to the AIs about them. So you can still do it, and I still do it. It's great.
Do you have any practices that you do yourself, like having your phone out of the bedroom, or to detach it all, or no?
I hardly use my phone, even for phone calls. For one thing, even the big phones, for me, they're too small. But I am laptop addicted. I admit that. But there's some natural constraints on your ability to use your laptop, and I find that useful. So having clumsy, thick fingers has been good for me, is how I would put it.
Nice. There's this MIT preprint where people used ChatGPT to write their essays, and they had less brain engagement and couldn't quote what they'd written. Before I ask you about that preprint and your take on it, what do you think about drawing conclusions from neuroscience?
I'm very skeptical about most neuroscience. That study in particular was basically a fraud. I wrote a column on it for the Free Press. But if you just put it into GPT or Claude and ask what's wrong with this, it'll rip it to bits. I agree that AI will make a lot of people stupider, but that study doesn't show that. And it doesn't show the different ways that AI can make us much smarter either.
What are the things that you will not hand off to AI?
My writing, I do fully myself. I do have the AI fact check and proofread, which I find useful and the AI is good at. I enjoy the writing. It's why I got into all this, because I like writing. Also, my bosses insist on it. The readers prefer it. But there will come a time when the AI is simply better than I am at writing. And I'm not sure, the world still might want to read me and say, oh, well, we care what Tyler thinks. That may or may not happen. If it doesn't happen, I have other things I can do. But that day will come. And soon, within 3 years.
Within 3 years.
Maybe within 2 years.
I feel the same way about writing and AI. I found it to be amazing for fact checking. Just today, I published a piece on my Substack about one of my great aunts who traveled from Iowa on this trek to Salt Lake City. She was one of the Mormon pioneers. And Wikipedia told me the date was she left was 1847, or when the Mormons left. But it was actually, when AI checked it against church documents, the actual documents, it was 1846.
Amazing.
Bam. So if I would have just gone to Wikipedia, I would have got that wrong. It was great.
Now that you mention LDS, another piece of trivial health advice I have is don't drink soda, by the way. It's bad for you. Don't smoke. Yep. Live like a Mormon in those regards, at the very least.
Although I will say, growing up in Utah, there are few people who consume more diet soda than Mormons. That has become their coffee. Now, granted, it's diet, which is better than the full sugar version. But man, they consume a lot of soda.
Yeah.
It's a thing there. What do you think you've gotten worse at because of AI, if anything?
Not yet. Good AI is still pretty new. It's only a few years old. But maybe I'm less inclined to remember titles of books, because I know I can say, oh, that book, it came out 3 years ago. It was about Iran and it had a dark blue cover. And I put that into ChatGPT and GPT knows the book. So yeah, I've gotten worse at remembering names and titles of things.
You did a piece, I believe it was in the Free Press, that said AI will change what it is to be human. What do you think are going to be the biggest changes?
It depends on your age. I'm age 64. For me, I don't think it will be such a significant difference. Partly, I've been the way I've been a long time. I'm locked in. I have a lot of skills, some of which will survive improvements in AI, some of which will not. But I can keep on doing those skills. And I know I'll be very happy and fine, like giving talks in public. The demand for that won't go away. I think it's going up. But if you're 20 years old, I think the notion that you will need to find joy in the physicality of what you do will be much more important. I see that as healthy. But if you don't do it, you'll just be outcompeted. Simply knowing a lot of things will be worth less. So there's a kind of person who used to excel at being a lawyer. Those people are typically smart and hardworking, but they'll need very different strategies involving a lot more initiative and entrepreneurship, because simply being a kind of human encyclopedia, you're definitely outcompeted by the AIs. So a lot of adjustments will be needed. Intellect we will see as a less special feature of what humans are, and our physical natures, our loving and bonding natures will be more important. I think that's fine.
What's your take on job losses because of AI?
I think the number of jobs right now is basically going up in companies that use AI a lot. There'll be a lot of new jobs, just gathering data for the AIs to process or testing new drug ideas that the AIs come up with. I think employment will go great, provided with our own central bank and fiscal policy decisions, we don't mess it up for other reasons.
Yeah. One of the things you've talked about is that if there are some sectors that lose jobs, the hardest part won't be the unemployment. It's going to be the psychological cost of adjustment. Tell us about that.
If you talk to parents now, and I'm sure you do, the question I get literally every day, either in person or email, is either what are my kids going to do, or what should I tell my kids, or what should my kids be ready for? And I have my own attempts at answers, some of which we just covered, but we all don't really know. And to tell people that, it's very disorienting. They don't like it. I think it's certainly understandable not to like it. If I think when I was a kid, I chose to be a professor, you chose to be a professor, my job's changed a bit, but really not that much, in fact. Like they added on the internet to my job. And I'm doing exactly what I thought I would be doing. Writing, speaking, teaching. That day is gone. So I think that's pretty tough for people. And you're established enough, I'm established enough. It's not gone for us. But anyone below a certain age, it's gone. And I think that's, very tough.
Do you think it'll be harder to get established in a world of AI?
It will be easier in many, many areas. But kind of some set of training jobs might go away, like being a legal assistant, and you eventually work your way up to partner. The things you learned as a legal assistant, they don't need you to do that work anymore. The AIs already do it better, and then improved AIs will do it better yet. I think we'll solve those problems, but I think we need a whole set of new solutions, and we don't have them yet. We need some kind of more explicit markets and training.
Yeah. All right, Tyler, we're going to start to land the plane. After a life of reading everything, meeting everyone, thinking a lot, delving into AI, what do you think it means to live a good life?
If you ask the AIs that question, their answers are fine, but they're just not that good. I'm not sure it's a legible question. That what it means to live a good life is something you can't sum up in terms of what it means to live a good life. It's like you've done those things. I've been very lucky, always having had good health. And the entirety of that is the good life. And if I can't break it down too much, that's maybe how it should be. Like if it were that simple, the life itself could not be that good. Like, always look left before crossing the road. You live a good life. Well, no, that's not enough. And you try to spell it all out, and the problem defeats you. And I think that's how it should be.
It's a wonderful answer. Tyler Cowen, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks for checking out the show, and thanks to Tyler for coming on. To find more of his work, check out his podcast, Conversations with Tyler, and also check out his blog, Marginal Revolution. He updates it every single day. That is one of the first tabs I open every morning. As a reminder, don't forget to hit subscribe. Don't forget to give us a review. That helps the show a lot. We're in your feeds twice a week, so keep an eye out for more. And as always, have fun, don't die, and listen to Tyler. Start saving, because there's a big chance you're going to die a lot later than you think.